Shout out to the most loyal members who have stuck with this channel even when I took a break from posting. Thank you Aliyah Rav, Sleeguy Triple Z, Mohammed Motala and the princess herself Teeny the Boo. There's a rumor going around, if you like this video and subscribe you will have ebony and ivory gifted to you, if you become a member you will find Yamato and Rebellion. This is the next part of, what if Dante had to hunt Vincent Valentine? Vincent watched the stranger carefully as he started to circle the ex-Turk, both staring into one another's eyes, guns in hands. They just carefully watched one another, waiting for one or the other move. And while they were circling one another, Vincent decided to take a quick look over of this strange man. It was a young man, maybe at least 22 or 23 years old. His hair was completely white and he had a tan complexion. His eyes were extremely blue, almost the color of blue ice. He was black leather pants and a red leather trench coat with the torso being of black leather. There was a few strange symbols on it as well, and around the stranger's neck, he had an amulet with 3 stones encrusted in it. A few of the stones were glowing with power, so Vincent figured they were materia. Though he had never seen 2 moon-shaped materia before, there was a large sword strapped to the man's back and it looked as if there was static bolts running along the blade. There was also a shotgun strapped to the man's waist from under the trench coat. There was something else about this man that troubled Vincent. It was the aura that he felt around him. The aura seemed a little dark yet light at the same time. And it was very strong. The demons within Vincent were very awake and frighteningly excited. He could feel them moaning with fear and anger within his head. So if Chaos was feeling uneasy, there was deep trouble brewing. "Who are you?" Vincent asked, sounding very serious. The stranger slowly made his way around the ex-Turk, carefully looking this man over. He finally stopped 15 feet away, his eyes studying this dark and mysterious man. He didn't like the feeling of this strange man in red any more than he was liked by him. "The name's Dante," he finally answered after a long silence between them. "I'm a demon hunter. And you?" Vincent still watched the stranger carefully, not wanting to drop his guard just in case this man was going to attack him. The man looked quite calm and relaxed, as if he wasn't going to do anything. But he was sure that if he dropped his guard for an instant, the white-haired man might attack him. Vincent didn't think that this Dante didn't look too dangerous and he couldn't have been any stronger than him either. But he had been wrong before. He didn't know what was making him so nervous. Maybe it was the title and profession this Dante just mentioned. Vincent lowered his head a little, letting a long strand of his hair fall over his ruby eyes. "I am no one in importance. What business do you have here?" Dante smirked before shaking his head. "Some name you have there, Mr. No One," he said sarcastically before looking around the area, for a brief moment. "Actually, I'm looking for someone. A wicked man. I was told he'd be around here, causing trouble and killing people. You know, all the evil stuff. You a bounty hunter?" Vincent asked, tilting his head. "If you are, Rufus Shinra isn't here. He's in Midgar if that's who you're looking for," he told him. The white-haired man shook his head looking back at the ex-Turk. "No, I'm not a bounty hunter. I told you, I'm a demon hunter. And I'm not looking for any Rufus Shinra, whoever that is." Vincent frowned at him, still the word, demon hunter, was bugging him. "You don't know who Rufus Shinra was? If I did, I probably wouldn't be looking confused right about now," Dante remarked. "I'm looking for a dangerous demon." Vincent had a feeling things were going to turn nasty if this demon hunter found out that he actually had demons inside him, so he figured that it was time to leave. He put his gun back into his holster and turned away. "Sorry," he told him quietly, "I can't help you, but if you have the name of this so-called wicked man, tell me. And maybe I can tell you if I know where to find him." "Or the demon." Dante shrugged, still watching the man. "All right, I'm looking for a demon. I'm looking for is called Chaos. It's an evil demon and I believe it lives within a man." He frowned for a second. I think his name was Vincent Valentine. And when Vincent stiffened, spinning around and gave him an alarmed look, he smirked. "I suppose that would be you, Mr. No One of Importance." Vincent frowned darkly, tilting his head in wonder as he fully faced Dante, his hand back on his death penalty. He gave the white-haired man a look of suspicion. "I guess I am. What do you want?" Dante shook his head as he walked closer to Vincent, his guns safely placed back into their places at his sides. He stopped within 10 feet of Vincent, who stepped back, his hand still on the large triple-barreled gun. "I don't want anything. I'm just doing my job, he told Vincent. I've been hired to kill the wicked demon, Chaos. I'm a demon hunter who hunts and kills demons to keep humanity from dying. And I've killed a lot of demons in my time. He then shrugged. Now, if there's a way for you to separate bodies with the demon, I'll let you live so that someone else can kill you and end your wickedness. But if you can't separate, he smirked coolly, then I guess I'll just have to kill you. Vincent shook his head as he took another step back. I'm afraid I cannot separate with Chaos. I would if I could. But he's a part of me, and as for you trying to kill him, he smirked himself. Good luck trying, because you'd be dead within minutes, he warned the demon hunter. Hey, Dante chuckled, you seem very confident in Chao's power. He must be pretty strong if you talk like that about him, unless you're big-headed. But by the looks of you, you don't strike me the type that would brag about anything. He then reached up and grabbed Alastair's handle, pulling it out and slicing the air. Well, it looks like we're not going to be getting along at all. So why don't we just get this done and over with? I have to get back to my lovely lady, he told him, referring to his home, though he knew Vincent wouldn't know that. Vincent shook his head as he pulled out death penalty again, flipping his cloak to free his golden arm again. You don't know what you're getting yourself into, demon hunter Dante, he warned the white-haired man. If I were you, I would just go back to where you came from now and forget your mission before you die. You seem to kill demons to protect the world, so I don't want to kill you. The demon hunter rolled his eyes as he stood ready, spinning it with his wrists once. Some advice. Too bad you're not me. Otherwise you might have had a chance. There was a long pause between the two before Dante made his move, rushing forward to attack. Vincent immediately began firing off his gun, sending bullets flying at him. To his surprise, he missed the demon hunter. Dante had dodged the bullets as if they were only rocks being thrown by a kid. He was extremely fast on his feet and was enclosing faster than Vincent expected. Of course, he was going to learn that the ex-Turk was also fast. Dante moved quickly, swinging his sword. Vincent, who quickly dodged to the side, swinging his golden claws. He was struck though, in the arm. Dante jumped back, touching his arm where Vincent slashed him. He then smirked as he readied himself for another attack. Well, this is going to be fun. And he attacked again. Vincent quickly dodged the swinging blade, using his golden claws to deflect the attacks. The sword left only scratches to the hard metal surface, but the strength Dante was putting to the swing was unbearable. He began firing off his gun again, trying to shoot his attacker, and again to his surprise, Dante was fast enough to move out of the way. Actually, he jumped high into the air, kicking off the ground hard. Dante spun around, firing off his own guns at Vincent, who was quick to moving out of the way. He spun around quickly, firing off the death penalty again. Dante landed hard on the ground before charging as he fired. He immediately swung Alastair as soon as he was close enough again. Vincent just barely had time to raise his golden arm to deflect the attack. He immediately threw out his foot, deciding that it was time to fight hand to hand. Dante caught on immediately and complied to Vincent's wishes of fighting without weapons. The fist fight lasted for quite a while, both swinging at one another with their fists or sending powerful kicks at one another. They were showing great knowledge of hand-to-hand combat. It surprised both fighters on how much one of the other knew how to fight like he did. They were finding each other very difficult to defeat, and as their battle grew on more fiercer, they were starting to look quite dreadful. Finally, after a while, Dante grew fed up with how the fight was turning out. He had expected that he would beat this strange man quickly like he usually did with other opponents. It was getting very frustrating on how strong this demon man really was. Kicking Vincent hard in the chest with some of his demon strength, he staggered back a little after also getting slashed in the side by the golden claws. Vincent staggered back several feet, a hand clapped over his chest where Dante had kicked him. He couldn't help but wince by the throbbing pain he was feeling. Dante had kicked pretty hard, and it felt like Vincent had just got kicked by a chocobo, and they kicked really hard. I'll admit it, Valentine demon, Dante said, shrugging lazily as he began to circle the former Turk. You are one tough bastard to fight. I've never had a challenge like you before. Other than my twin, Virgil. But that's because he was like me. Now then, what do I got to do to see this so-called demon, Chaos? I heard he's such a badass. But if he's anything like you, I'll have him beat in no time. Vincent's head was lowered so Dante couldn't see his face, his long black hair helping him to hiding it. But if he had been looking up right at the demon hunter, he would have noticed that Vincent's eyes suddenly started glowing hot red. But Dante did notice how Vincent's body was twitching. As if he was having a fit or as if he was crying. He didn't really think anything of it, but it did make him smirk. "What, you tired of our battle?" On the contrary, Vincent spoke, his voice much darker and more monotonous than before. Dante was surprised by the sudden change of his enemy's voice, enough to step back. Vincent's head finally came up, yet very slowly. His glowing red eyes peeping through the strands of dark hair. "I'm just getting started, Demon Hunter," he growled, only this time, it wasn't Vincent's voice. It was Chaos's. Vincent's body let out an inhuman growl as he stood up straighter, his skin starting to darken as if he was burning alive. Soon his skin had turned completely black. His hair shrunk into his head and vanished as two long horns grew out from his head. There was a sudden ripping noise as two black, leather, bat-like wings shot out from Vincent's back, spreading out high and wide. A dark cloud seemed to be growing all around him as he went through his horrific transformation. He was no longer Vincent Valentine, but the legendary darkness demon, Chaos. Dante couldn't stop himself from stepping back in shock, his eyes widening as he looked Chaos over. He could feel a very dark and powerful feeling coming off of this demon. He could sense what kind of power this deadly demon possessed. This was going to be a very tough battle, he knew it. For a brief moment, Dante felt a sense of nervousness shoot up his back. But then again, this was Dante, the son of Sparta. He did not fear nor give up so easily. So, he began circling the demon, who watched him carefully. "You're the big bad demon, Chaos, huh?" Chaos snarled at him as he slowly turned to keep Dante from getting baying him. I am. What, are you now afraid, Demon Hunter?" he growled in dark amusement. Dante snorted as he faced the demon. "Not likely, I'm not afraid of anything. Especially of overgrown bats like you," he remarked. Chaos snarled in rage before charging at Dante. Dante quickly moved back, missing the demon's claws by inches. He was finding this very difficult though, for Chaos was extremely fast. And by the looks of its claws, if they were to meet his flesh, he could get slashed to bits. It was thanks to Lady Luck that he was moving faster than the demon, and it was fast. The two of them were practically black and red blurs as they quickly attacked one another. Dante was nearly nicked a few times as he quickly moved away from Chaos, his teeth clenched in anxiety and concentration. He even jumped clean over the demon only to get hit by the demon's wing. It sent him flying 15 feet away, but with grace, he landed on his feet, skidding a little. He quickly stood up straight and fired off a few rounds at Chaos. The demon didn't even bother dodging them. He just let the bullets sink into his chest as he sped forward, swinging his claws. "Arg!" Dante grunted in pain as the demon's claws sank into his chest. Chaos sneered evilly at the white-haired demon hunter, as he roughly shoved Dante right into a tree, pinning him there. "You were a fool of challenging me, human," he snarled excitedly, digging his claws deeper into Dante's chest. "And now you die," he said, shoving his claws deeper. It was then Dante laughed darkly as his blood running down his front. His head lifted a little to look right into the darkness demon's eyes. He saw the confused look on his enemy's face, saw the wicked smirk falter. And that made him smile even more in a very dark way. "I don't die easily, demon." Then he quickly brought up his leg close to his chest before kicking the demon right in the chest, sending him flying several feet away from him. The impact made Chaos crash right into a group of trees and looking extremely stunned. Dante just moved away from the tree, touching the blood on his chest. "Now, I'll admit it. That did hurt like a bitch," he said truthfully. "But I have had worse." Chaos's eyes widened seeing that Dante was not weak nor had any wounds. The slash that he had just inflicted on this demon hunter had vanished. There was blood on his front but no tears in his skin or clothes. That did irritate and startle him quite a bit. You're not hurt." Dante shook his head, smirking coldly as he slowly made his way towards the demon. "Nope, not even a scratch." Chaos's wings spread out as he bared his teeth. "You're not human," he growled. "Nope, not quite," Dante said as he grinned, his hands once again grabbing Alastair's handle. "I'm a half-demon," and with that, he charged at Chaos, swinging the sword. Chaos quickly tried to dodge but found that Dante was a lot faster than he had been showing before. He was stunned as he was slashed by the electrifying blade. He snarled in pain before quickly swinging his claws again. Dante easily blocked with his arm before slashing the demon in the side. Chaos growled in pain as he immediately took the air, letting Dante drop down to the earth's floor. A demon. Who hunts his own kind. He half gasped, half snarled. Dante shook his head as he watched Chaos flying around him. Sorry, Chaos, I'm not like your evil kind. And then he jumped very high in the sky, just as flashed with hot blue light. He transformed into his own demonic form. Chaos was almost too stunned to react before quickly trying to avoid the swinging blade by the demonic Dante. But the demon hunter quickly pursued, slashing at Chaos, cutting into his black flesh. The battle was starting to turn very fierce as the two demons slashed at one another, tearing into each other's skin. They were like black and blue blurs in the sky as they flew above the lake. They crashed into trees as the other attacked, but neither paid attention. Unlike Chaos, Dante did not seem to be weakening. The wounds Chaos inflicted on him didn't seem to stay for too long. It was like he healed every time. He did notice the amulet around Dante's neck starting to glow now and then, and he started to figure that was how Dante was healing himself. He even tried to grab for it, but Dante immediately knocked his claws away before stabbing him in the shoulder, cutting into the base of Chaos's wings. The demon threw his head back and snarled in pain before dropping down to the ground, terribly beaten. Dante fell from the air, landing on his feet just as he transformed back into his human form. He stood up and looked at the fallen demon, who was in a heap. Chaos's wings had fallen all around his black body and he was shaking badly. His claws was over the horrible wound Dante had given him, his growls coming out from deep within his throat, yet in a very painful way. Chaos's blood was draining from his wounds and heavily. He was in a terrible shape. He could barely stand up as he tried. His eyes slowly lifted up to look at Dante, who approached with ivory and ebony in his hands. The demon hunter smirked coolly as he stood above the demon, one gun immediately pointing at the demon's head. Some demon, you're strong, but strong enough. He then shook his head. Remember, devils never cry, even when they're in hell. And he cocked back the hammer, ready to fire. Suddenly there was a loud crack of thunder and blinding white light flashed alive, all around Dante and Chaos. The demon hunter jerked his head away, quickly covering his face with both arms, stunned by the strange phenomena. He even had to close his eyes from the brilliant white light. Even Chaos covered his eyes from the light, blinded by it. "Run, Vincent, fly away," came a sweet yet firm voice. Dante quickly opened his eyes, ignoring the pain the light was giving him to aim his gun to finish Chaos off. But before he could fire, Chaos's leathery wings shot outward, knocking into him over. The demon quickly, with eyes closed, took to the air, flying upward as fast as he could, ignoring the searing pain in his body and wings. He knew he had to get out of there before Dante recovered. Though, Dante had as the light slightly dimmed. He quickly took aim again, ready to fire. But once again, a strange phenomena happened. Before he could fire, there was a loud splash as the water from the lake rose out of the water as if it was alive and shot over to where he was standing, wrapping around him. Dante was stunned by what was happening, but before he knew it, he was suddenly yanked right into the lake as if something had grabbed him. He fell into the lake. Only seconds later, when he finally was released and allowed to go back to the shore, he looked up into the once again dark sky only to see no Chaos. The demon had escaped. The party in the old Midgar city was still on as it grew later in the evening. Though it was starting to die down as people started to leave, taking their children home to put them to bed. Few still remained, still talking or dancing to the soft music. Off to the side, most of the orphan children that Tifa looked after was sitting around Reno, listening to stories that he was telling. Some of the children gasped at tense parts and laughed at funny parts. The Avalanche members all sat together, sharing stories of the latest adventures they had or talking about the past. That also included Rufus Shinra. He had finally finished his meeting with the construction workers and went to listen to the great adventure his once-known enemies had during the battle against Sephiroth. He didn't say anything, taking every word in that Cloud was telling him about why they defied Shinra Inc. in the first place. Still, everyone was enjoying themselves. "You know," started Sid Highwind, while taking a drink. "It's kind of sad that everything is settling down. Nothing's happening anymore. There's no threat, hardly no friggin' monsters to fight, or bad guys to beat up. Life is just way too peaceful now. It's kinda unnerving." Cloud and the others all smiled and shook their heads. They somewhat agreed but disagreed. "I know, Sid, how you feel. But it feels nice that we don't really have to fight anymore. There's no threat against the planet, everyone's happier than they've been a long time. They all deserve to be happy and don't need to be afraid every second because there's not threat. The blonde avalanche leader said. The others nodded in agreement. Tifa smiled as she wrapped her arms around herself, her eyes closed. It's nice. I know it's gotten a little dull around here, but we should take an advantage of it. We should do what we can until there is a threat on the planet, hopefully it won't be too soon. Someday, something or someone will show up, wanting to take over the world. She shot Rufus a look, who gave her an annoyed look. An avalanche will be there to stop it and save the world again. She finished. Barrett folded his arms as he looked off towards Reno telling the children scary stories. He could see how scared the kids were and could see Yuffie's eyes wide with fear but excitement as the red-headed Turk went on with his story. Well, I'll tell you what. I'm gonna beat Reno black and blue if Marlene and Denzel has nightmares, they's for damn sure. He growled. Everyone laughed as they looked in the direction of Reno and his little group. Rufus just shook his head as he ran his fingers through his hair. Well, if you don't want a couple of little kids waking up late in the night, crying out in fear, I suggest you go over and stop him. Reno can tell a few scary stories to remember. Cloud smirked as he looked at his old nemesis with amusement. And I suppose you're just saying that out of experience, he asked jokingly. Rufus gave him a cold stare as he picked up his glass of wine Tifa had given him. Definitely not, he said in a huff, and that made everyone just laugh or smile. They knew he was lying. Barrett grumbled as he shook his head, making his way towards the small group. He was grumbling about two things. 1. Rufus Shinra. He still didn't like the fact that the ex-president was hanging around when he was once their mortal enemy. The others couldn't blame him. They didn't trust Rufus Shinra still. The Avalanche members remembered how he had ordered their deaths just so that he could look good. The other thing was Reno. Barrett did not want Reno to be telling scary stories to Marlene and then having her wake up screaming in her sleep. I'll put a stop to it real quick then. The others just smiled and shook their heads and watched the large black man move away from them, towards the red-haired Turk. Well, he hasn't changed too much, has he? Rufus said, nodding towards Barrett. Tifa shook her head. Not too much, but he has. He just loves Marlene too much. If anything were to happen to her, he'd freak big time. But you can't blame him. Marlene is very special to him. She told the ex-president. Red 13 smiled as he sat up, on his hind legs. She's something special to all of us, he announced. The other Avalanche members nodded with smiles. Rufus looked towards Marlene, a faint smile on his face. Well, she sure seems like a sweet child. Cloud on the other hand wasn't listening. He was frowning as he tilted his head to the side, listening very hard to something else. He could hear something off in the distance. Something was approaching them, but he wasn't sure what it was. He could almost hear wings beating the air, high above their heads. It could have just been bats flying high above the city, or birds staying up late in the night. Cloud started to look towards the sky, to see if he could see where the bats or birds were, just to be sure. And then, Mark slowly reached for the door as the pounding grew louder. Reno told his scary story, his hands above his head and fingers curled in a creepy way. His heart was thumping hard against his chest. The pounding grew louder and louder. Was it the boogie monster or was it Corona? He wasn't sure. The children around Reno drew back in fear, all eyes wide with excitement and some in fear. Marlene was clutching Denzel's tightly as she watched Reno telling the story. The slightly older boy just smiled as she moved closer to him, feeling her breath on his skin. He always found it amusing when Marlene did that. Slowly, Mark reached up and took the doorknob, slowly turning it. And suddenly, just as Reno's voice grew louder for the intensive scary part, there was a loud snarl above their heads, making all of the children and the Turk jump in surprise and fear. And from above their heads, something big and black fell from the darkened sky, landing right in the bonfire the children and the Turk had been sitting around. Hot coals and burning logs flew everywhere, making everyone scream and scatter very quickly. Everyone bolted as the large black creature rolled out from the fire, wings flapping in the air as it tried to move. All of the grown-ups were already on their feet, weapons in hand and ready to fight whatever it was. They saw the black heap of leathery skin and wings. It took a few moments to let everything settle in. A large black creature had fell from the sky, snarling and growling in pain. By the looks of it, It was bleeding heavily and it was burned from falling into the bonfire. The creature was still growling in pain as it tried to roll out of the flames and burning debris. It was trying to get to its feet but was failing. It just fell back to the ground, gasping and growling. Tifa was the first to realize on who it was. She gasped as she bolted forward and around her stand, rushing towards the black creature. No, she cried out. She felt Cloud grab her arm to stop her but she pulled away and just hurried over. Cloud, it's Vincent. Everyone blinked in surprise before they realized that she was right. They could see the detailed features of the demon as he laid near the burning logs, shaking from pain. They all bolted forward to see if he was still alive. The black wings of chaos slowly changed from black to red, falling loosely like cloth and slowly, Vincent reappeared. Tifa fell at his side, carefully lifting him up. Cloud joined her side, bent to one knee looking his old friend over carefully. They were both stunned by the state the mystical man was in. The others just stood around them, looking worried and shocked. They all wondered how he had gotten like this. It must have been something pretty nasty to hurt Vincent like this. They all knew that he was not a pushover at all when it came to fighting monsters. Vincent, what happened? Cloud asked, touching his friend's shoulder. Who did this to you? Vincent flinched from the contact and also the pain but he slowly shook his head as he tried his best to stay awake. He could already see the darkness starting to creep up on him. Duh. A demon hunter. He gasped through gritted teeth before he passed out from exhaustion and pain. Vincent, Tifa said worriedly as she gently touched his neck. She could feel a pulse still but it was very weak. Her wine-colored eyes looked up at Cloud, full of tears. Cloud, he's starting to fade. We have to get him inside and fixed up. Cloud nodded as he looked to Barret and Sid. Right, Barret, Sid, help me carry him. He looked back at Tifa and Shira. We're going to need a bed, Tifa, for him. He told her. Tifa nodded as she quickly stood once they had Vincent. Okay, and she bolted towards the seventh heaven with Shira right behind her. Yuffie, Nanaki and Reeve quickly began gathering up the kids before they all hurried towards the bar and inn. About an hour later, everyone was sitting downstairs in the bar, waiting for Tifa, Shira and Reeve to come back down for the results on Vincent. They were all quite solemn and talking quietly amongst themselves about what might have happened to their tall and dark friend. Reno kept coming up with the excuse of Sephiroth or one of his remnants had come back but no one really listened to that option. Finally, the three came down, all looking tired and worried. There was some blood on their clothes but they really didn't pay too much attention to it. All three were wiping sweat from their brows and breathing heavily. Tifa still had tears in her eyes, which was also a little red but once the others had looked their way, she tried to give them a smile and failed. Cloud was the first to stand and move over to her, still looking very worried. How is he? He asked, touching her elbow. Tifa sighed as she went to sit down with Cloud at her side. Reeve and Shira doing the same. He's resting now but really weak. He's lost a lot of blood. We almost lost him but he managed to stay with us. Reeve reported before digging into his pockets and holding up something. I pulled this out of him. It's some kind of bullet and it has an unusual design on it. We're not exactly sure what it is. He told Cloud. Cloud went over and took the bullet from the old Shinra employee and examined it. His eyes squinted a little at the design of a woman with what looked like blades in her hands. It was just a little imprint in the side and it was amazing on how someone could put such a small imprint on a bullet of this size. Strange, commented Cloud. Sid folded his arms and leaned against the bar counter, his eyes full of concern. So what was wrong with him? What happened to him? Shira shook her head wearily, sinking onto a stool. He was covered in bruises and cuts. Something had cut him up like meat on a chopping block. He has severe bruising but those will heal. Something sliced his side open pretty bad. She told everyone. He's lucky that his insides hadn't fallen out. We stitched it up as much as we could then tried to heal him with a cure materia. Tifa nodded as she sighed sadly, pouring strong drinks for everyone. We don't really know what happened to him or who did this to him. He was in and out during the procedure but couldn't really tell us anything. We can only guess, she said to everyone. Barret folded his arms, a deep frown on his face. Who could have done this to Vince though? He's one tough SOB. There is no way that someone simply did that to him. Something really big must have gotten a hold of him. Cloud slowly shook his head as he took a drink from Tifa, his worry lines once again over his brow. I don't know about that. It could have been something big but he did fine with Dark Bahamut when Kadaj set it on edge. And that was the biggest monster we've ever fought, other than the weapons. But they're not around anymore. We killed all of them. Whoever did this to Vincent, they must have been really good. He told everyone, still shaking his head. Tifa tilted her head as she thought of something. Vincent said something about a demon hunter in his sleep. He was really delirious while we worked on him. He kept saying demon hunters and said the name Dante a few times. But he couldn't answer any of my questions while Reeve and Shira patched him up. She explained to all the Avalanche members and the former Shinra president and employees. Everyone just frowned as they took it into thought. They didn't understand anything about what she might have meant. Dante. Who in the frick is Dante? Sid asked gruffly. No one answered because they couldn't answer. They just looked around at everyone, wondering if the one or the other knew the answer. But no one spoke, not even Rufus or the Turks. Then Cloud gritted his teeth as his eyes darkened. I don't know who it is, but whoever it is, I'm going to kill them. No one messes with one of our team and gets away with it. And it's more than likely Vincent's attacker knows that he's still alive. He said, looking around quite seriously. He may just come after Vincent if they really wants him dead. And when they do come, we'll be ready for them. In the meantime, I'm going to the Forgotten City to see if I can track him down myself. If we find him, his eyes grew very dark. We'll take care of him and find out why he attacked Vincent. Everyone just nodded as they looked at each other. Barrett folded his arms over his chest. I'll come with you, Spiky. I want a piece of this guy for hurtin' Vincent. He told the blonde. Cloud nodded as he looked over at Sid and Nanaki. Sid, Nanaki, you come too. If this guy can beat Vincent, then he's really good. He then turned his eyes onto Tifa. Tifa, keep an eye on Vincent. Call me as soon as he wakes up and let me know how he's doing. Okay, answered Tifa. Cloud looked over at Rufus. Shinra, as much as I don't like you, or trust you, I want to ask you to stick around and keep an eye on the place. I know that Tifa can take care of herself, but if this Dante shows up, she may need backup to protecting Vincent. I'm leaving Yuffie here too, but I just want to take precautions. He told the ex-president. Rufus only nodded as he flipped his bangs out of his eyes. Don't worry, we'll take care of the place. If this Dante fellow shows up, picking a fight, we'll be ready for him. Cloud gave one nod before looking around at Barrett, Sid and Nanaki. Let's head out. The sooner we leave, we might be able to catch Dante still in the Forgotten City, or on the way here. He said. The other three nodded and they all soon left. Far across the ocean, the spoken person was still in the Forgotten City, sitting by a fire to dry his clothes and highly annoyed at the moment. His target had gotten away and that didn't happen too much. Plus his clothes were soaked and water had gotten into his guns. He really did not like that at all. He treasured his guns and if anything were to happen to them, he would get very moody. He almost felt sorry for Vincent Valentine when he got a hold of him. The keyword, almost. Dante had hung up his red trench coat and black shirt near the fire so it could dry. He was cleaning his guns out, making sure they were going to work properly when he needed them again. He was making sure there was no more water inside the barrels and oiling them again. He wasn't even aware that someone was sneaking up behind him. I see you're still alive. But where's Valentine's body? Dante leapt to his feet, Alistair in his hand and ready to start swinging if needed to. His eyes narrowed dangerously and his body very tense. He stopped from swinging his sword because it was only his new employer, Jen. Do not ever do that again. He warned sternly. You should never, ever sneak up on me like that. Jen raised her eyebrow at him, her thin arms folding over her chest and shifted her weight under herself. I take it, with the mood you're in, that Valentine is still alive. She remarked. And he escaped from you. Dante gave her a dark look before he put Alistair back down and went back to his work with his ivory and ebony guns. For the meantime, he told her, I nearly had him but he flew away before I could finish him. He was seriously injured though. So be happy about that. He told her. I'll be more happier when he's dead. Jen said coldly, as she dropped her arms to her sides. The white-haired half-demon ignored her as he looked into the barrels of his guns, looking right at the small lake through it. He frowned deeply before lowering the gun, his eyes still on the lake. What is in there? Jen lazily glanced off to the lake before shaking her head. Nothing. Why, did you see something in there? If you did, it was probably the corpse of a woman who was killed for being such a fool. She remarked bitterly. Dante looked at her with a frown but then shook her head. The corpse of a woman? What do you mean? Never mind. Jen said, shaking her head. The corpse doesn't concern you. Stick to your priorities, Dante. You're here to kill Vincent Valentine. Not ask questions. I want that demon dead, she told him. She then paused, starting to realize something. Wait a moment, why does it concern you? Dante shook his head as he continued to stare at the lake. When I was about to kill Valentine, something happened. The lake seemed to come to life and stopped me from chopping him to bits. It made me let him go, he told her. Jen was quiet for a long moment, taking in all of the information that she had just heard from Dante. A few seconds later, her eyes flashed dangerously towards him. You haven't seen a woman wandering around this city, have you? A woman who looks exactly like me? She asked, seriously. Dante just nodded as he looked up at her. Yes, a woman who looks almost like you, light brown hair, lighter green eyes. She was wearing a pink dress. You have a sister wandering around here? He asked simply. Jen did not seem very happy to hear that at all. Her eyes just narrowed and her lips pursed tightly. Yes, actually I do have a sister here. And she's in league with Valentine. She will try to stop you from killing him, but don't worry about her. She's only a spirit. She died a long time ago. Here, actually, the corpse in the lake is hers. You see her again, just ignore her. She can't do anything to you but yap her mouth. Just make sure chaos dies, she told him before she turned and walked away into the darkness. Dante watched her go before he shook his head and went back to cleaning his guns. He really did not like Jen because the way she ordered him around. He would have just told her to shut up and let him go back to his world, but he knew that he couldn't go back until the job was done. Jen was the only way of him returning to his world. He did wonder exactly why she talked about her sister like the way she just did. It sounded like she didn't like her at all. After a long while of cleaning the guns, Dante set them aside and looked off into the dark trees. He was thinking to himself about his mission. He wondered where Valentine had gone and how far he did go. It was pretty obvious that he would be going to his friends for help, and that did not settle too well with Dante. Like he really wanted to fight so many people just to get the damn job done. But he shrugged it off as he stood up and got into his pocket, pulling out something. A strange white orb. When in the water, Dante had spotted something glowing green at the bottom of the lake before he was freed from the life force in the water. He ignored it for a while until he was sure that he was completely alone. After a half an hour, he had gone back in the water and dived all the way to the bottom of the lake to get whatever it was that was glowing. When he found that it was only a small white orb with a strange green glow about it. He wasn't sure what it was and what it was for, but he liked it. He could feel some kind of magical essence inside it, so he went back up to the surface and climbed out of the water to dry his clothes. Now, he was staring into the white stone, trying to see if he could find the source of its unusual power. It had stopped glowing after a while out of the water. Now it was just a white orb the size of a large marble. Dante muttered with wonder, staring at the stone. Interesting little piece, aren't you? He asked as if it were alive. He then looked down at his bare chest, at the amulet. He faintly smiled as he took it with his other hand and pulled out the fire jewel. He put the white stone in the empty slot, immediately feeling a strange power coming from the stone. It even started glowing green again. With a smile, Dante put the fire jewel away into his pocket, studying the white one. But after a minute, he looked up at the dark sky, frowning again. A very serious look on his face as he thought about something. Something's fishy here, and I'm going to get to the bottom of this. It was barely first morning's light when Dante decided to get a move on. He still had to try and find out where Valentine had gone off to, and he was pretty sure that it would take a while to finding him. He wasn't sure how big this world actually was, but it would take more than a day to finding his target. Dante left the ruined city, heading off towards the south, the direction that Valentine had gone in. He had to climb a large cliff though and then travel through a green forest. Thing was, as he went through the forest he felt a strange power within the trees. It also felt like he had been walking like forever. It was high noon before he grew very fed up and transformed into his demonic form. He took flight, flying higher than the trees to see how far he had gone. And to his great annoyance, he saw that he had hardly even moved. He was still very close to the ancient city. Very peeved, Dante decided to fly his way out. Not too long, He spotted some kind of camp near the city, so he decided to check that out. He landed near the camp and went in only to find several people digging. It was some kind of digging expedition. Dante had never seen anything like it. There was strange and unusual bones lying everywhere and aged machines here and there. Dante glanced off towards a group of people, who were talking to one another over something they had found. He figured that these people must have knew who Vincent Valentine was or must have seen him. He wondered if this was where the demon must have gone. He could have came here, transformed into his human form and asked for help. Dante figured that he could just find out. So he walked over to the group, immediately catching their attention. To his confusion, he saw fear in their eyes, as if they thought he was a villain coming to hurt them. They even moved back away from him, cowering. "I'm not going to hurt you," Dante told them as he moved closer. "I just need information." The braver of the group cleared his throat and walked over, trying to look brave. "You ain't no Sephiroth clone, are you?" he asked, hopefully. That made Dante frown, but he shook his head. "No, I'm not," he said, not even going to bother in asking on what a Sephiroth clone was. The man just nodded, looking very relieved, as did the other people. They even went back to their work, letting their leader deal with the stranger. "Good. Welcome to Bone Village. What can I do for you, sir?" Dante just shrugged as he tilted his head off to the side. "I'm looking for a man that might have come here last night. His name is Vincent Valentine. He's a tall, dark man. Kind of looks like a vampire. He was injured pretty bad last night. You see him?" he asked, watching the man carefully for any lies or uneasiness. The man looked confused though. He just frowned, looking very puzzled, and shook his head. "No, I'm afeard that we haven't seen any injured man. I was working last night and I didn't see no man. And I certainly don't know any Vincent Valentine. We don't really get very many visitors here. They mostly just pass through, not bothering in talking to us." He then looked off towards a woman wearing a purple uniform. "Hey, you were working the items shop this week. Have you seen a tall, dark man this week?" The woman frowned as she walked over, scratching her head. "Huh, tall, dark man," she tilted her head, still scratching it before her eyes lit up. "Oh, there was this one man earlier in the week. He was a tall fellow, wearing a large red coat, long black hair, and the most eerie red eyes I've ever seen. He didn't speak very much. He just told me that if anyone from Avalanche came looking for him, that they could find him at the Forgotten City. I think he was studying something there," she told her boss and Dante. "That would be him. Do you know where he's at? Or where he would be?" Dante asked. The woman shook her head. "No, as I said, he comes and goes. He was up at the Forgotten City. But if he's not there, I don't know. He could be in Midgar City. I heard Vincent Valentine has friends there." Dante felt himself smile at the news. He knew that must have been where Valentine went. He just nodded in satisfaction and lowered his head a little. "Midgar. Mind pointing the way?" The woman nodded as she pointed off into the south. "The city is where you're not going," someone said coldly. Dante and the two diggers turned around to see who said that and found three men and a lion creature walking towards them. A very unusual spiky blonde-haired man in the lead and looking very unfriendly. He didn't seem to like Dante at all. The other two looked just as serious, and the lion creature had its fangs bared. "That him, Red?" the blonde asked as they walked right up to Dante. The lion creature nodded as his hackles raised a little. "I think so. His sense is the same that was all over Vincent." It spoke. That did startle Dante a little. He had not expected the creature to actually talk. But then again, this was a different world and he wasn't from this place. The blonde turned his cool blue eyes back onto Dante, looking very serious before he took a step closer. Are you Dante?" The white-haired half-demon then smirked as he faced him completely, his icy blue eyes staring right into the tough-looking blonde's. "Yeah, I am. You must be Chaos's friends. I figured that he would go running to you for help." He then put his fist on his waist, shifting his weight. "So where is he? I thought he might have come back to pay me back. Did he die? 'Cause if he did, then my mission is complete." Cloud glared harder at this man, his teeth clenched tightly, and his hand immediately grabbed one of his swords on his back. He did not like the way this man was talking about his friend. "No, Vincent is alive. But you nearly did kill him. We managed to save his life when he showed up last night." He then glared harder when Dante sighed impatiently. "And you are not going near him again. In fact, you are going to pay for the pain you put him through. Please, Dante said impatiently, standing straight. You going to stop me? You're only human. I've got a job to do. Now why don't you just bug off and let me kill him? Barrett growled. His gun arm snapped to life and aiming at Dante, who looked alert immediately. He's our pal, that's why. We don't let anyone get away with hurting our friends. He snapped. Sid nodded, shouldering his spear. Got that right. You mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. He added. Dante rose an eyebrow before he reached up and grabbed a hold of Alastair's handle. Look, my business is with Valentine alone. I don't have any business with you. But if you get in my way, then I will have to kill you. Don't make me do that, he told them. Cloud shook his head as he whipped out his sword, slicing the air. No can do, just as Sid just said. You mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. He said coldly. His sudden actions had made Dante whip out his own sword, holding it up. Well, then, I'm just going to have to get the complications out of the way. I had no intention to killing you, man, but you're not really giving me a choice. No, not really, you don't give us a choice. The minute you attacked Vincent and hurt him like you did, you made the choice of facing us. Cloud warned him. Dante shrugged before he stood ready. Whatever, man. Let's just fight so I can go track down Chaos and kill him. There was a long moment's pause before both Cloud and Dante charged at one another, swinging their blades while Barrett, Sid and Nanaki was just going to step back and let Cloud deal with this so-called demon hunter until he needed the help. The swords crashed against one another, sending sparks flying and Cloud nearly stumbling back. He was stunned on the power Dante had just thrown into his swing. He had not been expecting him to be that strong. He barely had time to ducking under Dante's swinging blade. He quickly reacted by swinging his own sword. Unfortunately, Dante showed that he was much faster than Cloud expected. The demon hunter jumped high into the air, flipping over his head. Cloud jerked around and rose his sword just as Dante swung at him. The white-haired man was smirking. You're going to be a whole lot easier to beat, he told the blonde before he began to kick into overdrive. Cloud did his best to deflecting each attack that Dante was throwing at him, and it took a lot. He couldn't believe on how fast this Dante was. The two swordsmen kept on moving, startling poor frightened diggers out of their wits as they came close to being slashed. But they soon learned on how much control these two fighters had. When one or other came close to slashing a digger, they immediately pulled away, not slashing any of them. Cloud and Dante quickly took their battle towards the edge of town, away from the people. But they kept on fighting. Barrett, Sid and Nanaki winced as they watched Cloud come very close to getting his arm cut off by Dante's blade. They hadn't expected the Dante fellow to be this good. Damn, this ain't good, the big black man said as they watched the two just go at it. Nanaki sat on his hind quarters, frowning. Cloud's barely hanging on. This man is much better than we thought. But how is it even possible? Could he be a Sephiroth remnant? If he was, Cloud should be able to defeat him. He defeated Sephiroth and could dodge. Maybe this guy's bigger than Sephiroth, Sid said worriedly. Barrett shook his head, swearing under his breath. Well, if he is, then we're going to be jumping in real quick. 'Cause Cloud's gonna need some help in a minute. That Dante dude seems to be only playing with him. He hasn't stopped smiling yet. And it was true. Since Cloud and Dante started fighting, the white-haired demon hunter had been smiling at the blonde. It was like he was taunting his opponent. It seemed to pissing Cloud off even more as he fought the demon hunter. He just kept on swinging, sweat beads starting to roll down the sides of his face as he kept on moving. It was a dangerous dance of sword play, and it seemed to be some kind of game for this guy, and Cloud didn't like it. However, the battle was going to end soon. Cloud misread a move that Dante had made only to realize that he was trying to trap the blonde into doing something, and he fell for it. Because Dante immediately faked to the side and came very close to cutting Cloud's head off. But it shocked Cloud even more when he didn't. He had stopped from cutting into Cloud's skin. Do yourself a favor and say, "Uncle, man, I don't want to kill someone who's only blind of his friend's trickery. I kill evil demons, it's my job. I get paid doing it. But you are not a demon and I don't like killing people," Dante said coolly. Cloud glared into the white-haired man's eyes as he slowly shook his head. You don't like killing people, huh? Well, you're going to if you kill Vincent. He is not an evil demon. He is only the host of 4 demons and he has done nothing wrong. Why are you trying to kill him? What did he ever do to you? He asked just as coldly. Dante just frowned at that. It was true that the man, Valentine, hadn't done anything to him, and he usually didn't kill people who didn't. He didn't do anything to me. It's what he did to my employer. I'm just doing what she asked and serving judgment to the demon that killed her mother, that's all. I'm the good guy just doing what's right. Cloud frowned at him. Killing Vincent isn't right. He did nothing wrong and he did not kill anyone. Not a woman, anyway. He told the demon hunter, before his eyes lit up. He had heard Nanaki starting his charge with a roar. He could even see Barrett and Sid starting to charge. And apparently Dante sensed them because he jumped high into the air away from Cloud, to avoid the end of Sid's spear. All 4 Avalanche members whirled around to look up at where Dante had jumped to. And their surprise, he was in a tree and had now pulled out his guns and they were trained on them. Do yourselves a favor and stay out of my way, he warned before he turned and jumped tree to tree, leaving the 4 surprised fighters. Nanaki started to run after him but Cloud called him back. Wait, Red, he's gone. We'll find him later. The other 3 looked at their blonde friend, who slid the sword away. What's up, Cloud? Why'd you stop Nanaki? Dante's going to kill Vincent, Sid said, still looking after the demon hunter. Cloud slowly shook his head. I don't know, Sid. Something's not right. Dante just said that he's the good guy. I don't think he actually knows what's going on with Vincent. He frowned before looking towards the Forgotten City. I think it's best that we let him go for a while. It's going to take him a while to find Vincent anyway, and by the time he does find him, we'll be back in Midgar. Besides, I want to go check out the city. Maybe he left something there that might help us find out who he is and who he's working for. The other 3 looked at one another before nodded. All right, Cloud. I just hope you're right. I don't want to see Vincent get hurt because of this guy, Barrett said, the blonde side looking off towards Midgar. I know, Barrett. But let's just hope he can hold on a little longer. Just until we get back. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. The next part will be out soon.